We are now approaching what many expect to be the biggest congressional hearing of the entire Trump era. It may have been obscured a little bit by those big Democratic debates, but we've just learned that Bob Mueller will testify under oath on July 17th, and we're getting some hints of what both sides want to do about it. Politico reporting that Donald Trump's defenders want to undercut Mueller's credibility at the hearings and try to say this has all become a Democratic process of using him as a kind of a pawn and recycling certain attacks, and accusing his team of bias and using inappropriate surveillance. Democrats, meanwhile, want to use him to explicate the Mueller report on TV for the first time. I'm joined now by former federal prosecutor John Flannery, special counsel for 3 congressional investigations. How are you?
Hello, Ari. Good to talk to you.
Good to have you here. This is one of those things where we know more people watched the Democratic debates last week than any primary in history, which means a lot of Americans and voters tuned into that, and that was the focus, and I think for understandable reasons. Of course, it happened that the House Democrats unveiled their Mueller plan right around that same time. So here we are starting a new week, and that other news still sinking in. What matters to you about Mueller going under oath?
Well, what matters is it is an opportunity. Of course, it's a dangerous one for both sides. That is to say, if he's not going to sit down and talk to anyone beforehand, they have to take some risks how they question him at the hearing. The Democrats didn't show themselves very well organized at the last go-arounds, and this is kind of like Casey at the bat again. They have to really score on this one. And the Republicans make a big mistake, because if they're going to try to attack him like a common criminal, they're going to run up against a lot of difficulty with the presumptions of Americans about him.
Well, and let me ask you something about that. We showed that for a reason there, which is they're previewing a line of attack as if there's something wrong with him.
Yes.
Which would seem to undercut the president's entire claim that Mueller cleared him. That's a good thing. If true, wouldn't you want to support the credibility of the guy who supposedly cleared you?
Yes, well, they have an identity crisis, and the problem with their identity crisis is the number of obstruction counts that sit in the second part of the report. And even the first part of the report, I think the common sense now is that we have collusion, and if there's more investigation, we might have an indictment. The problem they have is they're going to make a charge, and the question is, are the Democrats going to break their form and actually answer the charge, or give Mueller a chance to answer the charge when it's their turn? Like, what are the nature of the people you hired? Were they Democrats out there to get someone? Why did you choose them? Those kinds of questions would rebut the coup question that the Republicans want to make. But by the same token...
But let me ask you this, given, especially since, to remind viewers, you've been counsel of these congressional investigations before. What do you do with a witness, particularly one with the credibility of Bob Mueller, who, when asked, well, I mean, here's a question everyone's got on their mind, right?
Right.
All this bad stuff about obstruction in Volume 2, if Trump were any other person, would you have indicted him? I mean, that's a question everyone wants to know. And if Bob just says, as we wrote in the report, that was not an available option, which doesn't really answer the question, do they have to leave it? How much should they push him, in your view, having worked in these hearings? Well,
I would treat him as a hostile witness in this sense. First of all, I would swear him in. He's coming in response to a subpoena. But I would ask him leading questions, and I would use the report. And I would use them not only to ask the question to have him affirm what he wrote, but to do it in such a way that there's a Reader's Digest for America in the 1 or 2 hours, depending how they carve up the time, to make their point. And they should do what you do, Ari. They should have documents they flash up on the screen. They should have film clips. They should have statements that they have recorded of the president.
You're talking about what the entire Beat team does. We're very proud of our production elements.
Yes, well, you're doing better than The Hill right now.
Well, so to flesh that out, what would you rip out of this report where he actually might be compelled to answer? Because if he's gonna say, my report is my testimony, and look, I don't speak for Bob Mueller, but I've been covering him for a while. He's gonna, in his understated way, he's gonna act like, hey, I told you all this already. I wrote it down, and then I gave my presser, and America remembers. And by the way, I think Bob Mueller has higher credibility than a lot of politicians. He's gonna say, I already told you, I'm not going beyond that. Then they are on their heels. What do they do then?
Well, you see, they've got it. That's why they have to ask the leading question. The leading question goes like this. In your report, you found this instance of collusion. And if he fights with you, you use his language from the report against him. And then you say, in your book, on the page 76, you say that if you investigated more, you might have found a crime. And why wasn't it a thorough FBI investigation? What stopped you from doing it? And then it doesn't matter what he says, because his report said one thing. And if he has nothing to say about what he meant by thorough, or that there could have been a crime, and why did you put it in the second part of the book referring to the first part of the book? Those kinds of questions are very helpful. And I think if you're saying, and I also think he should be questioned chronologically, so that you put the collusion next to the obstruction and you see the connection between the two. My experience...
Final thing I want to get you on before I let you go, though, because I'm running short on time.
Yes,
Ken Starr testified and gave his view of why he said President Clinton, quote-unquote, lied, and why he chose to lie, and why that mattered.
Right.
Donald Trump lies a lot, and he directed lies in this case, although his written testimony has not been accused of being false. But in the directed lies and the other people who criminally lied for him, do you think there's a question there to say to Mueller, okay, all this said and done, why did he lie? Because there was that tantalizing passage in Volume 2 where he said he may not have lied to protect against a collusion criminal conspiracy. He may have lied to cover up other crimes. And I thought, well, Bob, tell us more.
Right. I think that what you could say is you can't criticize us bringing Mueller here as Starr appeared and basically did no more than go over his report. But, Mr. Mueller, you have identified all these different items, and you've left open the question what to do with them. Do you believe that it's Congress that has to decide to impeach based on the evidence you found that you thought was worthy enough for us to consider? Something like that.
Or hold up the report, and now we're just doing full lawyer fan fiction. We hold up the report, and you say, is this an impeachment referral or not?
Fair question.
And if it's not, by the way, and I like to follow the evidence. Yeah. If it's not, and you're under oath, and Bob Mueller says, no, I'm not taking a position. I did not write this to suggest the impeachment of President Trump. However much that may disappoint people, that adds to the public record of understanding of what Mueller thinks. Congress, ultimately, co-equal branch, has to make up its own mind.
Right. And I think the biggest question for the Democrats and Republicans is whether they take seriously or not his May 29th statement saying, I'm not going beyond this. I'm not going to do hypotheticals about that. I think you have to expect he's going to be pretty solid on that. But I think if you can't get him to answer questions beforehand, then you have to treat him very carefully and study how you can ask him the questions the way I suggested, I think.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.